My wife blocked me from the home I bought. But the next day, she had a huge regret. You won't believe what I found out about my wife and her lover. I had everything: my dream house, a beautiful life, a future that seemed perfect. But one night, I stumbled upon something that shattered it all. What happens next? Well, let's just say betrayal, secrets, and revenge come into play. Will I get everything back, or is it already too late? Stay tuned, because this story is about to get intense. The house was supposed to be our dream home. It wasn't just four walls and a roof, it was the manifestation of everything Mia and I had worked for. Every marble floor, every floor-to-ceiling window, the panoramic view of the city, it was all a reflection of years of sweat, sacrifice, and ambition. This was the life I promised her. The life I worked tirelessly to build. And for the longest time, I thought it was perfect. I thought we were perfect. But now, standing here in the middle of this enormous house, the one we'd built together, I felt nothing. Just emptiness. The sun streamed in through the windows, casting long shadows across the room, giving the entire place a glow that was almost too warm. I ran my hand along the smooth edge of the custom nameplate by the door. Reynolds. My name. Our name. The name I thought would carry us into a future full of happiness, memories, and success. But now, it felt more like a ghost than a legacy. Mia and I, we'd met 5 years ago, at some charity gala neither of us had planned to attend. It was one of those chance meetings that changes everything. I'd never imagined someone like her would even look at someone like me. She had this confidence, this elegance that made the room feel smaller when she walked in. I remember thinking, who the hell is that? It wasn't long before I was hooked. She wasn't just beautiful. She was the kind of woman that made you feel like you could conquer the world just by standing next to her. And I wanted that. I wanted her. We were married within a year, in Santorini, under a sky that felt like it was painted just for us. The wedding was perfect. The orchestra played as we danced under the stars. The whole thing felt like something out of a movie. We promised each other forever. And for a while, it felt like we had it all. I gave her everything I could: designer bags, spontaneous trips to the Maldives, anything to see her smile. I had worked my ass off to build a real estate empire that could provide us with the life we deserved. But standing here, looking at this mansion, something was missing. I tried to push the feeling down. I told myself I was just tired. Too much work, too many late nights. But Mia, she'd changed. I could feel it. The way she'd become more distant. The way she spent hours staring at her phone like she was looking for something. Or someone. The late nights out with people I didn't know. She told me they were networking, but it didn't feel right. And the gifts, she'd started asking for things I didn't remember her ever wanting before. The shopping trips, the jewelry. This wasn't the woman I married. The thought tugged at the back of my mind, but I ignored it. She was busy, I told myself. She deserved it. She was out there making connections, building her own life. I was just too caught up in my work to see the signs. But then, everything changed that one night. I came home early, hoping to surprise her. I picked up her favorite sushi from the place downtown. I thought maybe we could have a quiet evening, just the two of us. I had the whole night planned out in my head. I was even looking forward to it. But when I walked through the door, the house was dead silent. Not a sound. No music, no cooking, no chatter. The lights were on, but it felt empty. I checked my phone: no messages, no calls. Just silence. I wasn't stupid. I knew something was off. I went into the kitchen, hoping maybe she'd just stepped out for a minute. Maybe she'd been busy with work. But when she finally came home, hours later, it was like everything clicked. She looked flustered, her hair all messy like she'd been outside in the wind. Her cheeks were flushed, and she avoided my eyes as soon as she saw me standing in the entryway, holding the takeout bag. "Blake, you're home early," she said, almost too casually. Dropping her purse on the couch, she breezed past me and headed straight for the kitchen, not even sparing me a second glance. She barely even looked at the food I had brought. It was like I was invisible. I tried to play it cool, though I could feel my heart sinking. I told myself, it's fine, she's just tired. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. "Anyone I know?" I asked, trying to sound nonchalant. My voice, though, betrayed me. There was an edge to it I couldn't hide. "Oh, Just some girls from the club, she said, brushing it off with the same indifferent tone she'd used to avoid me. The club. The one she'd joined 6 months ago. At first I thought it was great. A way for her to network. To meet new people. But those club meetings started turning into late nights, weekend getaways, and dinners where she never bothered to mention who she was with. Something felt off. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I had ignored all the warning signs. The trips to Paris, the shopping sprees, the tailor-made suits. There was no way she could have bought one for her brother. That didn't make sense. Her brother lived across the country. The lies were piling up, and I couldn't keep pretending anymore. That night, when she came home late and brushed me off like I was just a footnote in her busy life, I felt something snap. Something inside me told me this wasn't just a phase. It wasn't just stress or work. This was betrayal. She was hiding something. And I wasn't going to wait around to find out what. I had to know the truth. So, I started watching, checking her messages, keeping track of her movements. I knew I couldn't trust her anymore. I didn't know what I was going to find, but I had to know. The house, the life we'd built, was all at stake. And deep down, I knew I wasn't the one who'd been living in it. Mia had changed. But more than that, I had been blind. I had built this perfect life for us, but all along, it was a facade. And Mia? She was the one who had been pulling the strings behind my back. This house, this dream. It wasn't our foundation. It was the prison of my own making. It wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was a gut-wrenching certainty, one that gnawed at me day and night. Mia was hiding something. I'd never been the type to jump to conclusions. But everything, the late nights, the constant distractions, the way she'd suddenly become more distant, had started to make sense. I wasn't just imagining things. I wasn't paranoid. This was real. But it wasn't until that evening when everything fell apart that I truly understood just how deep this went. I came home early again, hoping to surprise her, hoping that maybe, just maybe, this was all a misunderstanding. Maybe she'd been busy. Maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought. But when I walked through the door, the silence hit me like a ton of bricks. There was no familiar sound of her in the kitchen, no hum of the television, no music. The place was eerily still. The only thing that broke the silence was the low hum of the refrigerator. I checked my phone, no messages. No texts. No missed calls, not even from her. She'd told me she'd be home, but there was no sign of her anywhere. My heart started to race. Where the hell is she? I couldn't help but feel a creeping anxiety set in. I tried to push it down, tried to convince myself she was just out with friends, maybe even working late, but deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. I waited. The minutes stretched into hours, each one making the weight in my chest heavier. I was pacing by now, trying not to let the panic show. I told myself, I'm being ridiculous. She'll walk in any minute. Everything is fine. But the more I thought about it, the more I couldn't shake the sense that something was horribly wrong. When she finally walked in, it was almost like I didn't recognize her. Her hair was a mess, like she'd been running or caught in the wind. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes darting around, avoiding mine. She looked flustered. The woman I married didn't act like this. She was always in control, always so poised. This wasn't her. Blake, she said, a little too cheerfully, as if I hadn't been standing there waiting for hours. You're home early. She didn't even stop to acknowledge me, didn't take the time to look at me or ask about my day. Just dropped her purse and headed straight for the kitchen like I was a stranger. I stood frozen for a second, staring at the back of her head, trying to make sense of the whole situation. I had brought her favorite takeout, had even gone out of my way to make the night feel special. But now, as I watched her bustle around, completely indifferent to the fact that I'd been sitting here, waiting, it hit me. I was nothing more than an afterthought to her. A convenience. A placeholder. She didn't even look at the sushi I had brought. Didn't even acknowledge it. And that was when I felt the pang of betrayal, sharp and unforgiving. I wasn't angry yet. No. This wasn't about anger. This was about something deeper. Something that went beyond the way she was treating me right now. This was about a realization. A slow, bitter truth that was sinking in. She was hiding something. And it wasn't just the phone calls, or the late nights, or the sudden obsession with high-end brands. It wasn't just the way she had started to drift away emotionally. This was about a complete change in who she was, and I had been too blind to see it. I tried to act casual. Keep it together, don't make it worse. I cleared my throat, watching as she grabbed a glass from the counter, her back still to me. Anyone I know? I asked, my voice tight with a strain I couldn't hide. Oh, just some girls from the club, she replied, her voice cool, almost too cool. No hesitation, no explanation. The club. The same excuse she'd been giving me for months. The one I'd accepted without question. But now, standing here, it felt like a lie. A well-crafted excuse to cover up something she knew she shouldn't be doing. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shout, demand answers right then and there. But I didn't. I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I took a breath, clenching my fists at my sides, my pulse pounding in my ears. I kept it together, just barely. What kind of girls? I asked, trying to keep my voice even. She didn't turn around. Oh, you know. Just some of the women from the social scene, she said. As if this was all perfectly normal. Like it wasn't a massive red flag. My jaw clenched. Social scene? These women were never mentioned before. She never once told me who she was meeting, what their names were, where they were going. Just some girls. And then, like a flicker of light breaking through the fog, the truth slammed into me. It wasn't just the late nights or the new interest in jewelry. It wasn't just the expensive taste that had suddenly emerged. It wasn't even the club. No, it was something else. Something darker, something that I hadn't been able to see until now. She was lying. And this wasn't just a little white lie about where she'd been, or who she'd been with. This was betrayal. And I had been too stupid to realize it. The sinking feeling in my chest grew. I started to feel a sharp sense of clarity. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to click together. The trips she'd taken to Paris. The suit she'd bought for her brother. The late nights at the club. The way she'd been so distant lately. It wasn't just coincidence. It wasn't just a phase. This was something much bigger. This was her slipping away from me, bit by bit. This was her hiding something far worse than I'd ever imagined. I couldn't just sit back and wait anymore. No. I had to know the truth. I had to confront it. My world was falling apart right in front of me, and I had been blind to it. But not anymore. I couldn't pretend I didn't see what was happening. This wasn't the life I had worked so hard to build. This wasn't the woman I married. This was something else. Someone else. I wasn't going to let it slip by anymore. I wasn't going to ignore the signs. Not when my whole world was on the line. I had built everything I had for her, for us. And now, she was taking it all, and using it to tear us apart. The worst part? I had been too caught up in my own ambition, in building this empire for us, to even notice what was happening in front of my eyes. She was my partner, my rock. But now, I was realizing just how alone I had been in this marriage. She wasn't the woman I thought she was. And what's worse, I hadn't been the man she wanted me to be. But I would be. I had to be. Because the truth was ugly, and I wasn't going to let it destroy me. I was going to fight back. I had no other choice. I wasn't going to be the fool anymore. No. This time, I was taking control. It wasn't just about the money. It wasn't just about the house. This was about something deeper. This was about me. And I would fight with everything I had to make sure I didn't lose myself in the process. It was time to face the truth. And I was done hiding from it. I know you're wondering what's going to happen next. I thought I had all the evidence, but things took an unexpected turn. Is Mia going to confess? Or will Marcus somehow slip through my fingers? Comment 1 if you think I'm going to expose them both. Comment 2 if you think they're going to get away with it. Let's see who can guess what happens next. I couldn't just stand there and do nothing anymore. The weight of the truth I had been avoiding for so long was too much to ignore. I needed to know exactly what was going on. It wasn't just the little things now. The lies, the excuses, the distance everything had built up to this moment. I had to dig deeper. I had to find out the whole truth, no matter what it cost. And that meant I had to start paying attention to every detail, every movement. I wasn't about to let them slip away unnoticed. So, I started following her more closely. I didn't like it, but I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. Every time she slipped away for a night out or went off to some mysterious club, I knew something wasn't adding up. At first, I tried to rationalize it. She was busy. She needed her space. But every time I saw her phone buzzing incessantly, or noticed her turning it face down when I walked by, my stomach twisted in knots. This wasn't just a busy woman. This was a woman hiding something. Hiding someone. I began checking the credit card statements, the ones I had been ignoring for months. What I found made my blood run cold. There were the usual expenses: groceries, gas, the cable bill, but then, buried in the list, were charges that didn't make sense. High-end restaurants, boutique shops I'd never heard of, and a hotel charge for a place I didn't recognize somewhere in New York. Mia hadn't mentioned a trip to New York, not once. But there it was, in black and white, staring me in the face. That was when I knew for sure. She was seeing someone else. She had been for a while. The weight of that realization hit me like a freight train. She had betrayed me, and she had been doing it for months. I had been living in a lie. A carefully constructed illusion, and I hadn't even seen it. All of it, the late nights, the secrecy, the unexplained expenses, it was all a part of her plan. She had made me believe that everything was fine, that our life was perfect. But it wasn't. It had never been. I had been so consumed with building our future, with providing her with everything she could want, that I had ignored the signs. I had ignored her. But I couldn't ignore it anymore. I couldn't turn a blind eye. I needed to know exactly who she was with, what she was doing, and how deep this betrayal ran. So, I started tracking her every move. I wasn't proud of it, but I had no choice. I had to know the truth, no matter what it meant. It wasn't long before I discovered Marcus. The guy who had been slipping in and out of her life, like he had every right to be there. He was the one I had seen at the charity event, the one who had lingered a little too long around Mia, who had smiled just a little too much. At first, I thought I was just being paranoid. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was reading too much into it. But deep down, I knew. I could see it in the way Mia looked at him, in the way she smiled, in the way her body language shifted when he spoke to her. There was something between them, something I couldn't deny. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but I didn't. Not yet. I couldn't afford to make a move without having all the facts. I had to play this smart. I had to be patient. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that Marcus wasn't just some guy from a charity event. No, he was the man Mia had been seeing behind my back. He was the one who had wormed his way into her life, into our life, and taken what was mine. But I wasn't going to let him get away with it. So, I started digging into Marcus. I hired a private investigator, someone I trusted, someone who could dig into the kind of stuff I couldn't do myself. I needed to know everything about him. His background, his connections, his history. What I uncovered made my stomach turn. Marcus wasn't just a random guy Mia had met. He was tied to a series of shady business deals, and his name was popping up on financial documents. I never thought to check. The more I learned, the more I realized just how deep this went. I was getting closer, but it wasn't enough. I had to get to the heart of this. I needed proof. I needed something I could use to expose both of them for what they were doing. I wasn't about to sit back and let her tear apart everything I had worked for. Not without a fight. And then, it happened. One night, Mia left the house without a word. She'd been more distracted than usual all week. But tonight, something felt different. I decided to follow her. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I knew I had to see where she was going. She drove to an upscale hotel downtown, one I had never been to. One I knew she hadn't mentioned before. My heart started to race as I parked down the street and waited. I watched her walk into the hotel lobby, her head down, her pace quick. It was like she was hiding something, like she was running from me. I wanted to call her, confront her right there, but I couldn't. Not yet. As the minutes ticked by, I felt a mix of emotions: anger, betrayal, hurt, but most of all, I felt cold. This wasn't the life I had built. This wasn't the woman I had loved. She was someone else now. Someone who could look me in the eye and lie to me, day after day. Someone who could tear apart everything I had given her. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not anymore. I waited until she came out. She wasn't alone. Marcus was with her. They walked out of the hotel together, laughing. I could feel my blood boiling as I watched them. This was it. The moment I had feared. The moment I had known deep down would come. They weren't just having an affair. They were together, building a life behind my back. And everything I had worked for, the house, the money, the life we built, it meant nothing to her. I could feel the rage rising in my chest, but I held it in. I had to be smart. I had to play this right. The next move was mine. I wasn't just going to stand there and let them tear my life apart. No, this was just the beginning. I would take back what was mine. I would make them pay for everything. I could feel the walls closing in around me. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how deep this mess went. Everything I thought I knew, everything I had worked for, was built on a lie. Mia, the woman I had trusted with everything, had been lying to me for months. I had started to connect the dots, and now I could see the full picture. She wasn't just having an affair with Marcus, she was working with him. This was more than just a betrayal of trust. It was a scheme, a plan that had been in the works for who knows how long. And I was the fool who had been too busy building our empire to see it. I started looking into the financials, digging deeper into everything Mia and Marcus had been involved in. I checked bank statements, credit card transactions, and even accounts I had never paid attention to before. What I found made my stomach churn. There were massive transfers, hundreds of thousands of dollars going into accounts I didn't recognize. And the worst part? These transactions were all tied to a shell company that had been set up just months before. It was a company I'd never heard of. A company that was connected directly to Marcus. Mia had been funneling our money into this business, this scam, and I hadn't even known. The more I found, the more the anger inside me grew. How could she do this? How could she take everything I had worked so hard for and just throw it away? The house, the cars, the trips, all of it was meaningless to her. She had been using me, using my success to fund her own little scheme with Marcus. And I had been too blind, too trusting, to see it. The thought of it made my blood boil. I needed to do something. I couldn't just sit back and let them destroy everything. I had spent years building my business, building a future with Mia, and now, I wasn't about to let them take it all away. I had to act. I had to take control. But I wasn't going to do it recklessly. I needed to play this smart. I couldn't afford to make any mistakes. I started making calls, reaching out to my lawyer, Victor, and even hiring a private investigator to gather more information on the shell company and the financial transactions. It was time to hit them where it would hurt the most, where it counted. But I wasn't just after the money. No, I was after something more. I wanted them to understand the cost of what they had done. I wanted them to pay for the way they had used me, for the way they had used us. As I went through the paperwork, the proof was undeniable. It wasn't just about the stolen money or the hidden transactions. It was about the betrayal. It was about the way Mia had played me for a fool. She had lied about everything. She had lied about where she was going, who she was with, and who she was becoming. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I thought I had spent my life building with, was gone. And in her place was someone else, someone I didn't recognize. Someone who had no problem tearing apart the life we had built. But I wasn't going to let her win. I couldn't. This wasn't just about protecting my money. This was about protecting my dignity. It was about making sure she knew that I wasn't the man she could walk all over anymore. I had been blinded by love. But now I saw the truth. And I was done being the victim. I scheduled a meeting with Victor. I knew it was time to take action. I couldn't just sit around and let Mia and Marcus get away with it. I had the evidence now, I had the facts, and I wasn't about to let them walk away from this unscathed. I wanted them to feel the consequences of their actions. I wanted them to understand that there was no escaping the truth. No matter how much they tried to cover it up, no matter how many lies they told, I had the upper hand now. I could feel the pressure building, the weight of everything I had uncovered weighing on me. It wasn't just about getting my money back. It wasn't just about exposing their affair. It was about taking back control. It was about making sure they knew that I wasn't some fool who could be manipulated anymore. When I met with Victor, I laid it all out for him. I told him about the shell company, the fraudulent transactions, and the way Mia and Marcus had worked together to destroy everything I had built. Victor listened, his face unreadable, but I could tell he was impressed with how much I had uncovered. It was time to act. We were going to freeze their assets, block the sale of the house, and take every legal step we could to make sure they faced the consequences of their actions. But even as I sat there, going over the plan with Victor, I knew that this was only the beginning. I was ready to fight. Ready to take back what was mine. But I also knew it wasn't going to be easy. Mia and Marcus weren't going to go down without a fight. They had been playing me for too long, and now they were going to try to worm their way out of it. But I wasn't going to let that happen. Not this time. The storm was coming. And I was ready. I had everything in place. The documents, the evidence, the financial records, each piece was like a carefully placed puzzle that was finally coming together. The truth was ugly, but it was mine to reveal, and I wasn't about to let Mia or Marcus escape the consequences of their actions. I had spent days reviewing everything, staring at pages of receipts, bank statements, and contracts, making sure every detail was correct. I wasn't going to leave anything to chance. The plan was set in motion, and now I had to wait. I hated waiting. I hated not being able to do something in the moment, but I knew this was the smart play. The next move had to be perfect. Victor, my lawyer, was on board. He'd seen everything I'd gathered and knew exactly how to proceed. But even as he reassured me that we were going to freeze their accounts, block the sale of the house, and get everything legally locked down, I couldn't shake the feeling that they were going to try something. I had watched them both for too long to think they were just going to let this go without a fight. Mia might have thought she could hide behind her charm, her lies, but she didn't know who she was dealing with. I had learned the hard way, but now, I wasn't the fool anymore. I kept thinking back to the day I saw them together. The way they laughed, the way Mia had looked at him like she had never looked at me. I didn't know who Marcus thought he was, but he was about to learn that he had messed with the wrong guy. I had given everything to that woman, everything, and this was how she repaid me? By playing me like I was nothing more than a stepping stone? No. This wasn't over. I was going to make sure they understood just how wrong they were. I wasn't going to let them take what was mine. Every day felt like a ticking clock. I could feel it in my gut, the constant pressure, the constant fear that I might be too late. The house, the money, the life we had built, it was all hanging by a thread. And Mia and Marcus thought they could just walk away with it. But I wasn't going to let them. I had been patient up until now, but that patience was about to run out. I kept checking my phone, waiting for the call from Victor. The moment when we could strike. When we could stop them from getting away with what they were doing. But even as I waited, a part of me felt sick. Sick that it had come to this. Sick that Mia had turned into someone I didn't even recognize. And sick that I had been too blind to see it sooner. But I wasn't going to stay stuck in the past. I couldn't. The clock was ticking, and I was ready to fight back. Finally, the call came. Victor's voice was calm, reassuring, but I could hear the urgency in it. "We're moving forward," he said. "We've got everything locked down. It's time to make our move." I felt a rush of adrenaline surge through me. It was happening. This was it. The moment I had been waiting for. But as the words settled in, I realized it wasn't just about the money anymore. It wasn't just about taking back the house. It was about reclaiming everything that had been stolen from me. My dignity. My trust. My future. I was done being the victim. Done being the guy who had everything taken from him while everyone else walked away scot-free. No more. It was time for Mia and Marcus to face the consequences of what they had done. We were going to do it legally. The courts. The injunctions. Freezing their assets. Stopping the sale of the house. But I knew that wouldn't be enough. Mia wasn't going to just roll over and take it. She was a fighter, and I had to be ready for whatever she tried. But I wasn't scared of her anymore. I had the upper hand, and I was going to use it. I took a deep breath as I prepared for what was to come. It wasn't going to be easy, but nothing worth having ever was. I was going to make them pay. I was going to make sure that the life they had tried to take from me, everything I had worked for, came crashing down around them. They thought they had won. They thought they had played me. But now? Now it was my turn. The next step was coming. I could feel it in my bones. And when it hit, I wasn't going to pull any punches. I had everything lined up. But there was still a part of me that couldn't shake the feeling that something was going to go wrong. Even though I had all the evidence, every single transaction, every phone call, the emails, I was still on edge. It wasn't just about money or property anymore. It was about revenge. It was about making them feel what I had been feeling all this time. But there was no turning back now. I had to finish this. Victor had filed the injunction. We had frozen their assets, blocked the sale of the house. And now all I had to do was wait. I knew Mia would try to spin it, try to talk her way out of it, but I wasn't having it. I wasn't the fool anymore. I was done being patient. I needed closure, and I needed it fast. So, I kept my eyes on them, on her, on Marcus. I knew they would try something. They always do. But I was ready. I had been playing this game for months, and now I had the upper hand. It wasn't just about getting back what was mine. It was about proving a point. They thought they could take everything I had worked for, my life, my love, my trust, and just walk away without consequences. They didn't understand who they were dealing with. I had spent years building this empire, this life with Mia, and now they were trying to destroy it. But I wasn't going to let them. I was going to fight for everything I had built, for everything they had stolen from me. The first part of the plan had worked. The injunctions were in place, and the house sale was blocked. Mia and Marcus were furious. I could see it in their eyes when they showed up to the house to find out that everything had been frozen. But I wasn't about to stop there. I needed to push them to the edge, make sure they felt the pressure. I wasn't going to give them an inch. I met with Victor again, this time to discuss the next steps. We had the proof now, everything was in our favor. But I still couldn't shake the feeling that Mia was going to fight back in a way I wasn't expecting. She had been playing this game for so long, lying, manipulating, hiding behind a mask of innocence. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I had to make her understand that she couldn't just tear apart my life and expect to walk away unscathed. The tension in the air was palpable. Every time I spoke with Victor or checked my phone, I couldn't help but feel like I was one step away from a massive confrontation. The storm was coming, and I could feel it building. Mia and Marcus weren't going to take this lying down. But I was ready. They had underestimated me, and now, they were going to see what happened when you pushed me too far. Victor had arranged a meeting. We were going to take the next step in making sure Mia and Marcus didn't get away with this. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew I couldn't be caught off guard. I wasn't going to let them twist the situation to make themselves look like the victims. No more lies. No more manipulation. It was time for them to face the truth. The day of the meeting arrived, and I walked into the room with a sense of purpose. I was ready. I wasn't the same man who had been blindsided by Mia's betrayal. I was a man who had fought back. I had learned from this. And now, I was going to make sure they knew that they couldn't take everything from me and walk away with it. I was done being the one who got burned. It was time for them to feel the heat. The meeting was tense. Mia and Marcus were both there, sitting across from me with looks of defiance in their eyes. I could see it in their faces. They thought they could talk their way out of this. But I wasn't having it. This time, I had the power. I had the truth. And I wasn't going to let them spin their lies any longer. I started with the facts. The bank statements, the hidden transfers, the lies. They couldn't deny any of it. Mia tried to play it off, acting like she didn't know what was going on. But I wasn't fooled anymore. Marcus, on the other hand, was too cocky for his own good. He tried to act like this was all some kind of misunderstanding. But I could see the cracks in his facade. They were both cornered, and they knew it. The moment I had been waiting for finally arrived. Mia broke. For the first time, I saw the woman who had betrayed me, the woman who had lied to my face for months, break down in front of me. She tried to justify her actions, but I didn't want to hear it. I didn't care about her excuses anymore. I didn't care about her regrets. What she had done to me, to us, was unforgivable. And now, she was going to pay for it. Marcus tried to interrupt, but I cut him off. I wasn't going to let him speak anymore. He had used me. He had used everything I had worked for. And I wasn't going to let him walk away from this unscathed either. He wasn't just some guy Mia had an affair with. No, he was part of the plan, part of the scheme to destroy everything I had built. And now, it was time for him to face the consequences. I leaned forward, my voice steady, but my words cutting through the tension like a knife. You think you can just take everything from me and walk away? Well, you're wrong. This ends now. I could see the fear in their eyes, and for the first time in months, I felt like I had control. I wasn't the man who had been left in the dark. I wasn't the man who had been played. Now, I was the one who was calling the shots. The storm was here, and I was ready to face it head on. Mia and Marcus had underestimated me. They thought they could play me. But they didn't know who they were dealing with. I had been pushed to my limits. But now, I was fighting back. and I was going to make sure they never took anything from me again. I had the feeling that the walls were closing in around me, tightening with every passing second. The confrontation was unavoidable now. Mia and Marcus could feel it too. What was once a steady confidence was now slipping into panic, their facade cracking under the weight of everything that was about to come down on them. I had been playing this game for far too long, letting them think they were in control. But now the tables were turned, and they had no idea what was coming. The air in the room was thick with tension as we sat across from each other. Mia, once the woman I'd trusted with everything, had become a stranger. I could see the unease in her eyes, the flicker of regret, but there was something else beneath it. She wasn't truly sorry, no. She was sorry because she was caught. That was the only thing that had changed. And Marcus, he was as smug as ever, acting like none of this mattered to him, like he had won. But I could see the cracks in his armor too. His hands clenched tightly, his jaw set in defiance, but I knew better. I could feel the shift. He was rattled. "I gave you everything," I said, my voice low and steady, cutting through the silence. "Everything, Mia. My time, my trust, my love. And you threw it all away like it meant nothing." The words came out with a cold finality that I hadn't expected. But now that they were out there, it felt like the weight of the world had shifted from my shoulders. Mia opened her mouth. Probably to say something about how she didn't mean for things to get this far or how she had her reasons. But I wasn't interested in her excuses anymore. I'd heard them all. I'd given her every chance to come clean, to tell me the truth. But she had kept lying, dragging me deeper into this mess. No more. I wasn't going to let her control this narrative anymore. This was my story now. "You don't get to explain this away," I continued, my eyes never leaving hers. "You don't get to play the victim after everything you've done." I felt a surge of anger, real, burning anger as the full scope of what she had done hit me again. She hadn't just betrayed me. She hadn't just taken what was mine. No, she had stolen something far more valuable, my trust. And once that was gone, there was no going back. Marcus shifted in his seat, his eyes darting between Mia and me. He could feel it too. The tension was unbearable, like everything was hanging in the balance. I wasn't going to let him get away with it either. I wasn't going to let him slink off into the shadows, untouched. No, I wanted him to feel the weight of what he had done. I wanted him to understand exactly how much he had destroyed, how much he had taken from me. "Marcus," the first said, my voice cutting through the silence like a knife. "You really thought you could just waltz into my life and take what's mine? You think I wouldn't find out?" I leaned forward, watching as his smugness started to falter, just a little. "You don't even belong in this story. You're just a parasite, feeding off the life I've built. But now you're going to pay for it." The words hung in the air, thick and heavy, as the truth settled in. Mia and Marcus had been playing me for so long, thinking I was too busy with work, too focused on building our future, to see the cracks forming in our lives. But I saw it all now. The lies, the deception, the way they had conspired behind my back, building their little empire on the foundation of my trust. I had built everything we had together, and they had used it for their own gain. I stood up, pacing for a moment, my mind racing as the anger simmered beneath the surface. Every part of me wanted to scream, to lash out, but I couldn't. That wouldn't solve anything. No, I had to be smarter than that. I had to make them understand that the game had changed, that they weren't going to walk away from this unscathed. I wasn't going to let them get off easy. "I'm done being the nice guy," I said, finally turning back to face them both. "I've given you both chances to come clean, to tell me the truth. But now, it's my turn. I'm taking back everything you've stolen from me. I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what you've done." I wasn't just talking about the money or the house anymore. I was talking about something much bigger. I was going to make sure they knew what it felt like to lose everything. I was going to take away their power, their control, just like they had done to me. Mia's eyes widened as she started to realize the magnitude of what was happening. She opened her mouth to say something, but the words didn't come out. I could see her panic rising, but it was too late. The trap had already been set. She had pushed me too far, and now it was time for her to face the consequences. Marcus, on the other hand, was starting to get defensive, trying to talk his way out of it, to minimize what he had done. But it wasn't going to work, not this time. I had the evidence. I had the proof. And I wasn't backing down. I have everything I need to make sure this ends right here, I said, my voice colder now, as the full weight of what I was about to do settled over me. You think you can just walk away from this? You think you can destroy everything I've worked for and not pay the price? I paused, watching them both squirm. Well, you're wrong. I could feel the power shifting in the room. For the first time in what felt like months, I was in control. The storm I had been waiting for was finally here. And I wasn't about to let it pass without making them feel every bit of it. This was my moment, the moment I took back everything. And nothing, not even Mia's tears or Marcus's empty threats, was going to stop me. This was far from over, and I wasn't going to lose. Not again. Not this time. The air in the room had become suffocating. Every breath I took felt heavier, weighed down by the realization that everything I had worked for was teetering on the edge of collapse. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, each beat a reminder of how close I was to losing everything. And yet, I wasn't backing down. Not now. Not after everything I'd uncovered. I had to confront this, face it head on, and make them understand exactly what they had done. I had to make sure Mia and Marcus felt the full weight of their actions. Mia's face was pale, her eyes darting nervously between me and Marcus. She was trying to hold it together, but I could see it, her mask was slipping. The woman who had once promised me forever, the woman I had trusted with everything, was now standing in front of me, broken. It wasn't the kind of break I had expected, though. It wasn't some remorseful tear-filled confession. No. It was fear. Fear of being caught, of having her world fall apart. And I was going to make sure it did. Marcus, on the other hand, hadn't changed. He was still that arrogant, cocky guy who thought he could waltz into my life and take what was mine. But now, there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. I could see it. He knew the game was up. He could feel the ground slipping out from under him, and there was nothing he could do about it. The truth was finally catching up with him. And it wasn't just about the affair anymore. It was about everything they had done to me, everything they had taken. I had built my empire, my life, brick by brick, and they had torn it down without a second thought. I stood up and paced the room, my mind racing. My fists clenched as I thought about the months of lies, the way they had spun their web around me, convincing me that everything was fine. They hadn't just betrayed me, they had stolen my future. The house, the money, the dreams we had built together. Mia had sold it all, traded it for a moment of selfish pleasure with Marcus. I had given her everything, and she had repaid me with deceit. I turned to face them again. You both thought you could just play me, didn't you? I said, my voice low but steady. Thought the first wouldn't catch on. Thought you could get away with it. I stepped closer, my eyes locking onto Marcus. You're nothing but a thief. A parasite. And you, I said, shifting my gaze to Mia. You're no better. Mia flinched at my words, but there was no turning back now. She had to know that this wasn't just about the affair anymore. It wasn't about the secrets or the lies. This was about power. It was about control. And I was taking it back, piece by piece. You've been lying to me for months, I continued, my voice growing sharper. You've been hiding behind excuses and fake smiles, trying to convince me everything was fine. But it wasn't. And now, it's over. The finality of my words hung in the air, like a heavy fog. I watched as Marcus tried to speak, but I cut him off. Don't even try to deny it. You were in this from the start. You're just as guilty as she is. I wasn't giving them the chance to twist this. I wasn't giving them the chance to spin the narrative in their favor. They had used me, manipulated me, and now they were going to face the consequences. I could see the realization creeping in, the dawning understanding that their little game was up. They thought they had been in control, but they were wrong. This was my moment. This was when everything changed. You've destroyed everything, I said, my voice cold, cutting through the tension in the room. But I'm not going to let you get away with it. Not this time. I wasn't sure what they expected, but I knew they weren't ready for what was coming next. I had already made my move. The legal actions were in place, the evidence was solid, and now it was time to make them feel the pressure. Mia started to speak again, her voice trembling, but I didn't want to hear it. She didn't get to explain herself anymore. She didn't get to justify her actions. Not after everything she had done. You made your choice, I said, cutting her off. And now, you're going to pay for it. I wasn't sure how this would play out. I wasn't sure how far they'd go to try to escape the consequences. But what I knew for sure was this: I was done being the victim. Done being the guy who sat back while everyone took what was mine. I wasn't going to let them walk away without feeling the full weight of their betrayal. The silence in the room was deafening. It wasn't a peaceful silence. It wasn't the calm before the storm. No, it was the silence of inevitability. I had them cornered, and they knew it. I wasn't going to let them talk their way out of it. I wasn't going to let them escape unscathed. This was the beginning of their downfall, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. Mia's face was flushed now, her eyes wide with fear. I could tell she was trying to piece together a defense, but there was nothing she could say that would change the reality. It was over, and deep down, she knew it. The woman I had once loved was gone. She had shown me who she really was, and now it was time for me to show her who I had become. I could feel the power shift once again. I was no longer the man standing in the shadow of her lies. I was no longer the fool who had trusted her. I was the man who had uncovered the truth. And nothing was going to take that away from me. I took a deep breath, standing tall, and watched as Mia and Marcus finally began to crack. The storm had come, and there was no escaping it. The world I thought I knew had been shattered. And yet, somehow, I found myself standing here, in the middle of it all, feeling strangely calm. The storm I had been dreading was no longer a distant threat on the horizon. It was here, right in front of me. And now, it was up to me to make sure that Mia and Marcus knew exactly what they had done. I had spent months building up the strength to get to this point, to face them and tear away the last remnants of the life we had built together. But I wasn't just angry anymore, I was beyond that. I was done. It wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about reclaiming everything they had taken from me. The control, the trust, the future that had once seemed so bright. They had destroyed it, but now, I was going to rebuild. As I sat across from them, I could see it in their eyes, their disbelief, their desperation. Mia, once the woman who had shared my dreams and ambitions, now looked like a stranger to me. She sat there, avoiding my gaze, her face flushed with embarrassment and regret. But I wasn't interested in her apologies anymore. The time for that had passed. I had seen who she really was, and it wasn't the woman I had fallen in love with. That woman had been replaced by someone who was willing to betray me for her own gain. And Marcus? He was no different. He had played his part, using me, taking what wasn't his, and now, he was sitting there, desperately trying to act like he wasn't the man behind it all. But I could see through him. I could see the fear in his eyes now. He had thought he could walk away from this unscathed, but that was never going to happen. The room felt heavy, the silence oppressive, as I looked at them. The weight of everything they had taken from me, the lies, the deceit, the betrayal pressed down on me. I had trusted her. I had trusted Marcus. But now, all I had was the cold, hard truth, and that truth was going to tear everything apart. I wasn't about to let them manipulate me anymore. This wasn't about getting back at them out of anger. It was about justice. It was about standing up for what was mine, and showing them the consequences of their actions. You think you can just walk away from this? I said, my voice steady but low, the anger simmering just beneath the surface. You think you can just take everything I've built, and leave me with nothing? I paused, letting my words sink in, watching their faces. Mia looked away, her fingers fidgeting nervously in her lap. Marcus was silent, his eyes flicking between me and her, as if trying to figure out his next move. But there was no escape. The walls were closing in on them, and they knew it. Well, you're wrong, I continued, my voice cold. This is far from over. They both flinched, but I wasn't going to give them the chance to speak. I had been patient long enough. I had given them every opportunity to come clean, to face the consequences of what they had done. But now, it was my turn to take control. I had the evidence. I had the proof. And I wasn't backing down. Not now, not ever. Mia, you've been lying to me for months, I said, my voice rising slightly, the frustration and hurt seeping through. You've been hiding behind your excuses, behind your stories, but I'm not buying it anymore. I watched her shrink back, her eyes filled with shame. It didn't matter anymore. Nothing could take away the fact that she had betrayed me. And you, Marcus, the first turned to him, my gaze hardening. You think I didn't know? You thought I wouldn't catch on to your little scheme? Well, here's the truth, this is over. The room seemed to grow colder as I spoke, the tension building with every word. They didn't know it yet, but the foundation of their lives was crumbling. And I was the one holding the wrecking ball. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. Not when I had sacrificed so much. I had worked my ass off for everything we had, every property, every dollar, every moment of the life I thought we were building together. And now, it was all slipping away, taken by the people I trusted most. I took a step closer to them, my fists clenching, as I fought to keep my emotions in check. You've stolen from me, Mia. You've stolen from us, I said, my voice breaking slightly, the pain of it hitting me like a punch in the gut. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is that you took something from me that I'll never get back. My trust. My faith in you. And once that's gone, there's no coming back from it. Mia's eyes welled up with tears, but it didn't matter anymore. The damage was done. She had crossed a line she could never uncross. She had betrayed me in the most hurtful way possible. And I wasn't going to sit here and listen to her try to justify it. I had heard enough. You don't get to explain this away, I said, my voice sharp now, the anger bubbling up again. Not anymore. I turned to Marcus, who was now looking less confident, and more like a man who realized the jig was up. You thought you could just take what wasn't yours and walk away? No. Not this time. You're going to pay for what you've done. Both of you. The room was silent, but the silence wasn't peaceful. It was the silence of realization. They knew I wasn't bluffing. They knew I had the power now. And as I stood there, watching them, I knew I had made the right decision. This was the moment when everything changed. They had stolen my life, my trust, my happiness, but I wasn't going to let them keep it. I've already taken the first step, I said, my voice a little more confident now. The house is frozen. Your assets are locked. And the truth is out. The public is going to know what you did, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Mia's face turned pale, and Marcus clenched his fists, but it was too late for them. The trap had been set. They were both caught in it, and they couldn't get out. I was done being the guy who let them pull the strings. It was my turn to take back control. Everything you've done, every lie you've told, is coming to light, I continued, feeling the weight of my words as I spoke them. And when it all comes crashing down, I'll be the one standing. Not you. You think you can just tear everything apart and walk away unscathed? No. Not this time. Mia and Marcus were both silent now. The reality of the situation sinking in. They had nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The truth had caught up with them, and now, they were going to pay for it. I had been a fool once, but I wasn't going to make that mistake again. This was my life, and I was taking it back. They had underestimated me, thought they could pull one over on me. But now they knew better. The storm had come, and they were right in the eye of it. The final chapter was being written, and I wasn't going to let them walk away from this. This was my moment of redemption. My moment of reclaiming everything they had taken from me. I had fought too hard to let them destroy it all. And when the dust settled, I would be the one who stood tall. Because in the end, the truth always wins. And this time, the truth was mine. Now that you've seen how everything unfolds, do you think justice was truly served? Was I able to get my revenge? Or did Mia and Marcus find a way to escape? I want to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below, and tell me what you would have done if you were in my shoes. And don't forget to like if you saw it coming. Or share if you think this story is insane. Trust me, this isn't over yet. The hardest lesson I learned from all of this is that trust is fragile, and once it's broken, it's nearly impossible to rebuild. You can spend years building something, but it only takes a moment for someone to tear it down. Never ignore the red flags, and never let someone manipulate you into believing lies. Stand up for yourself. Protect what's yours, and when someone betrays you, don't be afraid to expose the truth. Trust your instincts, and always be aware of who you let into your life. In the end, you're the only one who can truly control your future.